Welcome to episode 3 in our series, Detailed Breakdowns for the PMP exam. Today we're taking a look at scenario 11 to 15. Project risks are not properly managed. What can you do as a project manager? What you should do next is conduct a risk review or risk reassessment and develop a risk response plan. It is important to communicate to the team and stakeholders and ensure that a plan is implemented, and then you recycle with a risk review and a risk reassessment. Remember, a risk reassessment reassesses a risk. A risk assessment assesses the risk in the first place. And a risk response plan is a plan for how to respond to the risk. What would have prevented this? A comprehensive risk management plan to guide the team on how to manage risks in general, and a regular risk review. At this point, we will take a look at a couple questions based on that scenario. So let's jump straight into our questions. It reads here in question 1, as a project manager, you discover that several critical risks were not identified during the risk identification process. What should you do first? Is it A, develop a risk response plan for the identified risks? Is it B, assign a team member to monitor the identified risks? Is it C, revisit the risk identification process? Is it D, update the risk register with the newly identified risks? What do you think? Hit the pause button if you need more time. Using the process of elimination, if you find out that risks have been identified and they were not previously identified, well, you need to go over risk identification again. You need to do that all over again. So the best answer to this, my friends, is C, revisit the risk identification process. The rationale is the first step should be to revisit the risk identification process to ensure that other risks haven't been missed. Only after a thorough risk identification process should you consider updating the risk register and developing response plans. Let's go back to our slide to conclude this. So what would have prevented project risks not being properly managed is a comprehensive risk management plan and regular risk reviews. Let's go for one more question from that first scenario. Question 2. It reads, during a project status meeting, a team member mentions a potential risk that was not documented. Which document should be updated to reflect this new information? Is it issue log? Is it risk register? Is it risk management plan? Or is it project schedule? What do you think? Okay, hit the pause button if you need more time. So, if a team member mentions a potential risk that was not documented, the place to update that would not be the issue log, neither would it be the project schedule. And that leaves us with two options, B or C. Well, it wouldn't be C because C is the plan for how to manage the risks. The place you put the risks is the risk register. So the best option is B. This is a document where all identified risks are documented, along with their potential impact and planned responses. Any new risks identified during the project should be added to this register. Let's move on to our next scenario. Our next scenario is scenario 12, and it reads, change requests flood in. What should you do next? Well, you should prioritize change requests and you should implement a strict change control process if you haven't already done that. So how do you prioritize change requests? You read the change requests, you analyze the change requests, and that should be part of your change control process. What would have prevented this? Well, a clear change management plan with a well-defined process and stakeholder alignment. So let's take a look at a question revolving around this. Your project is experiencing a high volume of change requests. What should your first step be? What should be your first step in handling these requests? Is it A, review and analyze the change requests in accordance with the change control process? Is it B, reject all change requests? Is it C, implement high priority change requests immediately after approval? Is it D, inform the stakeholders about the potential delay due to change requests? Hit the pause button if you need more time. Well, think about it. The sensible thing to do is to always analyze those change requests. You got to do an impact analysis. So the best answer is review and analyze the change request in accordance with the change control process, which is actually A. All right, so A is review and analyze the change request in accordance with the change control process. The rationale is it's important to follow the change control process to evaluate the impacts, benefits, and feasibility of each change request. Implementing or rejecting all requests without proper analysis can have negative consequences on the project. Let's go to question 2. You are receiving a large number of change requests during the execution phase of your project. What is a key document that can help in guiding the evaluation and approval of these change requests? Is it A, configuration management plan? Is it B, CCB register? Is it C, change management log? Or is it D, change management plan? What do you think? Well, my friends, as far as a key document that can help guide, it's got to be a plan. So it wouldn't be B and it wouldn't be C. It boils down to A or D. The change management plan is the best option because configuration management is specific to artifact change, widget change, anything that is considered as an artifact, but that does not span across the entire gamut of change requests that can be experienced. So with that said, the best answer is D. It is change management plan. Let's take a look at one more scenario, my friends, for today, and that is scenario 13. And it reads, inadequate risk reserves. What would you do next? Reevaluate the risks and follow change control procedures to adjust the budget for adequate reserves. Communicate the changes to stakeholders if approved. Now, what would have prevented this? Proper risk assessment and regular monitoring of risk reserves. With that said, let's go ahead and take a look at one or two questions. Last two questions for today. You realize midway through the project that risk reserves are inadequate. What is the most appropriate step? Is it A, conduct a risk reassessment to determine the required reserve? Is it B, request additional funds from the sponsor? Is it C, assess the risk score after the decision tree analysis to compute contingency reserves needed? Or is it D, perform a probability impact assessment of EMV prior to change requests? All right, so this will take some time for some of my friends to read and go through because it's not as direct. But when you realize the risk reserves are inadequate, you need to do something. And that first thing is understand the context. Understand why this is needed and how much or what is needed. In order to do that, you need to conduct a risk reassessment that will help you reassess your risks. Some of these options are actually bogus. Take a look at option C, assess the risk score after the decision tree analysis. This is a big fat lie because the risk score is done before decision tree, right? Should be done before your EMV, not after. So that doesn't even make sense, even though the answer is a little bit off. And B, perform a probability and impact assessment of EMV prior to change requests. This doesn't make sense. Probability and impact assessment of EMV prior to change requests is not sensible. When we talk about the probability times impact, we should definitely assess that, but that would not be the criteria to make change requests. The best answer in this case, the safest answer that is without controversy, is A, conduct a risk reassessment, whatever that means. That will cover your qualitative risk analysis and your quantitative risk analysis, right? And that will help you understand the required reserves. D just spits out a formula and says do a quantitative risk analysis, but then it doesn't give us the context for the change request. Context for whatever change should be reserves. So it's just like a bunch of text that sounds intelligent, but doesn't lead to a conclusive enough answer. And that is why the answer to that is A. A is the best answer. So I hope you found value from this, my friends. We've run out of time, but in our next episode, we will be tackling scenarios 14 and scenarios 15. Thank you for joining. You take care and all the very best. And don't forget, when you have these questions to tackle on the exam, you should always remember that I've given you a blueprint, the Dig-Sieve approach. Always define the problem and identify the root cause. Break down problem into smaller ones, and that could help you better identify the root cause. If there's any data, make sure you analyze the data to help you identify the root cause. And then right there in the exam, mentally generate alternatives and then choose the best alternative right there in your exam seat. This is the mentality you need. Okay? In the real world, you would implement the solution and verify solution effectiveness, but I want you to do that in your head. Go back and ask the question, did I really choose the best option? Does this make sense? Is this correct? Always remember to read slowly and identify the core issue. Determine the phase you're in. Recall those processes and make sure you are eliminating any extreme options. You're always going to get the crazy options. Also, the generalizations like always, never, and so on. Look for the next logical step and beware of distractions. You're going to get a bunch of distractions in many of these questions. 2 could be distractions. Trust the PMBOK guide principles from PMBOK 7, know them well, and also use your gut instinct. By following this approach, my friends, you will enhance possibility of success. If you're stuck or you're looking for training and coaching to amp up your game, going down to Praizion.com, let's help you succeed on this exam. You take care and bye for now.